Hey, what's up, YouTube fam? This is Aspinus here, and my plan is to do at least two videos, if hopefully three, depending on timing. But this one I wanted to, additionally to this, and this one I wanted to make special. As you can tell from the name and what I've brought up in other videos, I am on the autistic spectrum or the autistic spectrum disorder. And that's basically a grading scale of where we're at on the spectrum. It does range from high functioning to low functioning. I personally don't really care too much for classifications, period, but that is the actual diagnostic tool that the DSM-5 uses, and there's been like it says five things, and I'll get into how the classification works and how it's worked throughout the or changed throughout the years. But I know for me, just growing up with it, it's been a very interesting way to grow up, and I ultimately want to use this channel not only to do let's plays and everything, but to advocate for what me and many others do have, and so that is very very important to me that this is there. So I do have this website. It is joinsprout.therapy.com, and I'll be reading a lot from that, and then I'll go into my personal history with it. But through this reading and everything, it's going to mainly depict, the demographics, the rates, what to expect from it, and everything else. And it fully goes into an explanation of ASD or Asperger's, however you want to call it. And that is one thing to keep in mind when you talk to someone with this. I personally, like I said, autism is autism, if with even with its varying levels. I don't care what you call it with me, but some people prefer to be called one way or the other. So honestly, just out of respect for that person, make sure to ask them what they prefer that it's called, or even pay attention to how they talk about it, because that will give a strong indication of what they're going to, how they prefer to say it. So let's jump right into it, and I will include this link down below in the description. That way, if parents want to read it or anybody else wants to read it, you're more than welcome to. So, with the statistics part, approximately 1.8% of children in the United States have a diagnosis of autism, a rate that has more than doubled over the past 2 decades, which is very true. They it lists later on that it's because of the fact of how they diagnose it now and everything. It has a broader range, but even with the how that's done, it is a huge spike in everything. So it has changed quite dramatically. Um, let's see. In 2021, people of all races and social economic groups are impacted by the disorder. Worldwide, roughly 1 in 160 people is thought to have autism. This number is likely much higher, however, as there is limited data available from low and middle income countries, which is very true. Um, there, it is starting to become more broad and out there, but there are people, there are not people, there are countries that are still behind. So the numbers can actually be higher worldwide, and that's just the honest truth of it all. People around the world struggle with challenges associated with autism, such as mental health issues, intellectual disabilities, and health concerns. Many of these people don't have access to necessary treatment, which that is very true. It has a very much impacting things. I've been impacted in different ways than other people on the spectrum, and vice versa. And that is one very important thing to remember as well. And the slogan is, if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. We have such a varying degree of differences. It's just like being the unique humans that we are. There's not going to be one of us that's going to be exactly alike. So thinking all of us are savants can even offend some people. Or thinking that we all like one particular subject, or we have this particular fascination fully in one subject. It might be different for others, so please keep that in mind. Me personally, I'm very open. I don't particularly care, but like I said, there are other people that it cares to them. Um, Changes to the diagnostic criteria of autism over time have contributed to the increase in diagnosis and people seeking treatment for the disorder. Autism therapy, such as ABA therapy, can greatly improve the outlook for a person with autism. And I will say this real quick. And I'll go into the history later. I got diagnosed at 3, and I got the help I needed. I wouldn't be where I'm at if I didn't get that help. So the sooner the diagnosis does happen and the more treatment that they get, it really is going to make an improvement in their lives. So for those parents that don't quite know what to do or anything, please reach out either to me or someone, a professional. That way you can get their opinion in, or input/opinion in, and see if you need to take the proper steps. Um, while there is no cure for autism, early intervention services can help to reduce lifetime health care costs substantially. It is estimated that the lifetime cost of autism can be as high as 2 million per person, and for some individuals that's true. They do require heavy therapy, heavy work and everything like that, and that's important. Rates of autism in 2021. Now, this is going to give a varying degree of the different percentages through. I mean, this will give the general 2021, and then later on, it'll talk about the varying degrees as the DSM has upgraded. Um, Autism is common developmental condition affecting approximately 1 in 54 children in the United States. Far more boys are diagnosed with autism than girls, 1 in 34 boys versus 1 in 144 girls, which that has been a big issue. Since, earlier on, since it was prevalently thought that males would have autism, the diagnosis was primarily based on males. Male versus female autism can be very different. Females are a lot better at what's the term is called masking, and that's basically being able to appear normal. And that has affected their diagnosis chances, which isn't fair. I personally don't think it is. I think that it should have been very, very much, a even thing, even with statistics based. I think it should have been better done, but that's me personally. So. Um, most diagnoses are made after the age of 4 through a diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder. ASD can be reliably made by the age of 2. Like I said, I was 3, so it is possible. Early screening tools are being used to catch cases earlier, allowing for therapy to begin at the soonest point possible, which results in the most successful outcomes. They're even zoning in, and I'll provide more, maybe clinical data on that, but they are zeroing in on a way to check genetically, just like for Down syndrome or anything else like that, to see if that is if that can be indicated sooner. That way, instead of waiting till even like 3 or 4, a parent knows how to get that right therapy right from birth. So that is really cool development, and there is new stuff every day practically with autism and research. So that is very important to remember. Um, all ethnic and socio-economic groups are affected by autism. There is no medical test or cure for the disorder. Personally, I mean, it's tough, but I don't think we necessarily need a cure. I mean, it comes to the whole thing of speaking of genetics of a popular Marvel group, and it's not necessarily that we need a cure. We just need more understanding. Um, but for others, it might be important to them that this gets taken care of. It just really depends from, like I said, one autistic person to another. Um, the exact cause of autism is unknown, though many risk factors have been identified. There is a genetic link to autism. If there is a family history of autism, it raises the likelihood that a child will develop autism. I have read not YouTube, Facebook posts where they've talked about how an autistic parent had 2 or 3 children. I remember reading one where all 4 of the kids had a form of autism. So it is very much a genetic marker thing. Uh, Parental age is a factor. Children born to older parents have a higher risk of autism. I guess they kind of take in the factor, just like Down syndrome, you do have more of a risk if you are a older person that has had and end up having a kid later in life. I guess those risks are increased. If your first child has ASD, your second child has a 2.18% chance of also having ASD. And the thing that they don't list here, and I don't know the exact number or for even doubles, but for each next kid that you have, it goes up higher and higher. Which even means that I don't have any kids yet, but if I have a kid, or kids, that does mean that maybe um, a certain they might have autism, which of course I don't. I'm gonna love the kid no matter what. Kids, kids, what? But and at least I know exactly how to approach the situation. Um, Despite past media coverage, and this is important, there is no connection between childhood vaccines and ASD. I personally don't have a stance on either or vaccines. I mean, okay, here's my personal stance on vaccines. Um, if it came between the fact that it was true that, autism and vaccines are linked, um, I would much rather have autism than not be vaccinated, but that's just my personal opinion. I'm not here trying to take a dig at anybody. Anybody and everybody can have their personal opinion, and that's just the greatest thing about where we live, is you can have that opinion. It's just my own personal. So please don't take that as any. And it's me personally. I get aggravated with my autism sometimes. Especially when it comes to certain things like dating or huge interactions with people, but I do see most of it as a benefit. So there we go. Um, but yes, there are conflicting stories about whether or not vaccines have caused autism and everything. Um, if you want to, you could do your own research on that. Like I said, I don't have a stance on either or. Um, I think it's more of a genetic thing than an outside factor, but that's just me. The demographics of autism. Studies have found that all racial, ethnic, or socioeconomic groups are impacted by autism. We've already read that part. When evaluating the impact of socioeconomic status on ASD diagnosis, researchers have found that the prevalence of ASD increases with socioeconomic status. This could be due in part of greater access to healthcare, or therefore a higher likelihood of receiving a diagnosis, which I did bring that up. Research have also identified racial and ethnic differences in the prevalence of autism. Among Black, white, and Hispanic children, the difference in the prevalence of ASD has remained relatively consistent over time, especially among those from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. It's my ultimate opinion that it does, just like anything else with me, race doesn't matter. I mean, you're a human being, and that goes with the negative effects of human beings too. You have just as much likely risk of catching this and that. So especially with autism, um, black and white children see nearly identical prevalence of ASD. Hispanic children, however, are less likely to receive an autism diagnosis. Autism advocates are striving to expand access to diagnostic testing and subsequent services for children in underrepresented populations. The sooner children receive intervention services, the more they are likely to gain from that. I'm big proof there. That this increases the chances they will effectively acquire essential life skills for independent learning and living as they grow up. Once again, you know. Um, Autism among children in the United States. In an effort to track the number and characteristics of children in the U.S. with autism, the CDC established the Autism and Developmental Disabilities Monitoring Network in 2000, which I didn't know that. I actually made one video before this, but I did not have audio to it, so I was like, so this is the second video that I'm doing, to be honest. I'm still new to this, so bear with me. Um, the 11 surveillance areas vary in their data set. For example, Arkansas site consists of all 75 counties state, whereas Maryland site is just one county in the Baltimore metro area, which that's crazy. Maybe that one area gets it from the other counties and they just represent for them. I don't know what necessarily that means. Data published in the most recent ADDM network report, which was released in March 2020, revealed significant shifts and differences in ASD diagnosis and prevalence around the country. Overall, ASD estimates increased significantly across the country, with some sites exhibiting much higher rates of autism than others, and that could be once based again depending on social economic standpoints and everything else like that. I think no matter what, it's going to be the same everywhere, but I could be wrong in reality. In 2016, the prevalence of ASD among 8-year-old children living across 11 sites was as follows. And I'm surprised my home state, which is Texas, doesn't have this listed. Arizona 1.6%, Arkansas 1.5, Colorado 1.3, Georgia 1.9, Maryland 1.9, Minnesota 2.3, Missouri 1.4, New Jersey with a 3.1, North Carolina of 2.5, Tennessee of 1.6, and Wisconsin of 1.7. So most of them, except for 2 or 3 states, have a very base near amount, I've seen. Researchers from the ADDM network are still gathering information to better understand why prevalence rates vary so much between sites. While there was no overall difference in autism prevalence among black and white children, there were disparities in early diagnosis and interventions for black children. On average, black and Hispanic children received initial evaluations and diagnosis later than white children, as well as more delayed opportunities for early intervention services. And that's why I still personally believe, and why I do what I'm doing, is that we need more outreach, we need more research, because there are people out there that are either not getting the diagnosis, or they're not getting the right information, or being misdiagnosed. And I mean, that's important to catch as many as we can early on. So that's just me. Um, Autism worldwide. According to the World Health Organization, WHO, approximately 1 in 160 children worldwide has ASD. In the U.S., I believe it's 1 out of 53 to 56. So that's not much of a difference when it comes to the world. That's actually pretty high up there. In most cases, symptoms of autism become apparent before the age of 5 and persists into adulthood. Other conditions may occur alongside autism. This is very huge. While these conditions often present additional difficulties to children and families, some can be beneficial, such as higher intellectual aptitudes in specific areas, aka interest. The following are common co-occurring conditions for people with autism. Anxiety and depression. I suffer from these. And with therapy and everything else, I've worked really well, and I focus a lot better, not on the negative but the positives, and I work out to figure a solution a lot faster and easier without feeling dread and doom. Not to say that I still don't experience that from time to time, but with help, reaching out, it has helped, and I do encourage others. Just period. I mean, anybody that's not on the spectrum watching this, if you need help, get help. Reach out. I know I've just barely gotten to where I trust doctors again. I understand some people don't trust them, some people don't trust medicines, and I mean, but it is, there are alternatives out there to get you help, and I encourage that heavily. Epilepsy. This is another struggle that I have. I started when I was 15, and I'm 36 now, and believe it or not, I'm 36. Very common joke in my family, but it's just one of those things where, and I haven't been fully diagnosed, but I've had some positive tests of EEGs and some negative. The only thing where it did test negative for, but one thing that they thought was really weird was even asleep, my thinking patterns were real high, and I'm guessing that's because I'm autistic. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD. So yeah, a lot of times this is either co-lining with it, or even it gets misdiagnosed as ADHD instead of autism, and it's just autism. And that's where a huge problem is, I personally believe, is that the misdiagnosis doesn't help anybody. And then a lot of times where they could have gotten earlier resources and outreach for help, they get drugs that, don't help them in that way. I mean, even I have trouble with attention span sometimes. It's not because of ADHD, it's just because of my autism. Especially when I have multiple sensory factors coming in: sight, sound, even smell and taste. They do stand out more to me than a normal person does, and it can cause, my attention span to go elsewhere. I mean, just trying to focus on, that, and plus I have, I think at least 5 different things at once, honestly, as weird as that sounds, and that gets confusing enough. A lot of training from others and myself went into being to where I could handle that. Intellectual disabilities, and then superior intellectual abilities. This is where savantism comes in. or non-savantism, or being, for lack of a better term, and I do apologize, lower on the intelligence scale. Uh, some people on the spectrum are kind of stunted where others are not, and that's not anybody's fault. Or, like I said, I'm not making a dig at anybody. It's just fair. It's just the spectrum there. And like I said before, this is another way to think about it. Just because you met one ASPE or one autistic person, one ASPE, whatever, doesn't mean that you've met them all. Just because in popular media, songs, primarily movies, just different things like that. Just because someone has savantism doesn't mean that others are going to. And just because some people with autism are nonverbal doesn't mean all of us are. And that's the one good thing about the outreach and everything, and the media coverage now, because they are improving more and more on that, on how to portray autistic people, and they are starting to include even more people that are on the spectrum doing autistic roles, and I think that's amazing. Granted, I think there's some tremendously awesome people that are, the term is neurotypical, which is the average, the someone without autism, and that portray the roles. They do a good job. Some of them are just the classical, Rain Man type situation, which I love that movie. I'm not gonna lie, but um, don't mistake one of us for another one. I personally don't get offended by it. A lot of people are actually surprised when I tell them that I am. I had a conversation with a customer the other day who has two, and then one official diagnosis of a kid, and then her other two children have been, or two of them have been officially diagnosed, and the oldest one's getting diagnosed. And with that being said, they're all going to be different, and same with all of us. Many experts believe the prevalence of ASD worldwide to be much higher than the report rate of 1 in 160. Could be the same here in America. It could be higher. Like it was brought up earlier in that um, those states. It could be much higher just because of how testing is available in some areas, and some it's not as well. Um, Regardless of the current rate of autism around the world, data does show that the prevalence of ASD around the world is increasing in 2021. So each year it seems like it's increasing more and more. And I mean, I'll even bring this up, which I might even do a video on it, because I've always kind of wondered and done a little bit of research into it. Some people do, and some people don't believe that this is a form of evolution. You know, and it could be. Who knows? I personally want to dig deeper into it, and I might, like I said, do another video on it. Reasons for the increase in global ASD prevalence in 2021 include improved awareness of the condition, very true, an expansion of a diagnosis criteria over the last 50 years, and again, I'll read that part later, it is in there. Better diagnostic tools and improved reporting methods. So with more technological advance, more information period is able to be spread out, and that does include outreach and information on us as well, and about autism. So that's one good thing about the internet. It's good as it is bad, as there is a lot more information that can be gathered. ASD statistics: people with autism face specific complications that expose them to certain risks. Due to the nature of autism, people on the spectrum often encounter social difficulties, as well as health and safety challenges that neurotypical people are less likely to face. Um, and that is very, very true. Um, and this next part comes from Autism Speaks. And granted, yes, I do got the blue. Dang it. Sorry, I got the blue puzzle piece right here. I personally haven't looked into much about Autism Speaks. I know that from what I understand, there has been issues with misrepresentation of us and even theories. But I mean, at least some of this data is here to where I can at least present it. It doesn't mean I support Autism Speaks. It just means that I see data, and that's what I'm giving. Being nonverbal: roughly a third of people with autistic spectrum disorder are nonverbal. I could have been easily one of those if I didn't get the outreach I needed. Being bullied: almost two-thirds of children with ASD between the ages of 6 and 15 have been bullied by their peers. Unbeknownst to people, I was one of unbeknownst to people that I had it, I was one of them. I was unique. I was weird to them and sensitive, and I was just a easy marker. Granted, as you get older, and I will say this, most of the time as you get older, the people that might have had a problem with you when they were younger, that'll disappear. I remember I've talked to people on Facebook that used to bully me now, and they kind of apologized a long time ago, and I apologize for some stuff I did. You know, it's just becoming an adult. Being a kid, you're still growing up, you're still learning, and you don't know how to look at the differences in life. But as you grow an adult, more likely than not, you learn how to embrace differences and to celebrate them in other people, and as of yourself as well. A lot of times, also when you get if there's people bullying, they have a lot of issues that they might not be able to talk about in life, and they learn to deal with them and they change from it. Sometimes they don't, unfortunately, but most people do. So for anybody that is experienced autism and might even still be dealing with bullying, just do the best you can. Don't my best approach with stuff like that is the best revenge that you can show is that you could carry on and be stronger. That's just my personal opinion. Trying to get back at them, trying to you know be like them is not going to help whatsoever. You might as well. I'm not saying be tough or anything. Be the sensitive you. Be who you are. But don't try to get revenge. It just makes things worse. Engaging in self-harming behavior, which when I melt down, I have this, and I'll explain that later. Almost 20% of 8-year-old children with autism exhibit self-injurious behaviors such as banging their head against hard surfaces, biting their arms, or scratching their skin. I personally hit myself when I'm in a meltdown. I'll get into more in depth of that. Drowning. And this is a very, very sad thing, and I've actually seen articles on it where a child went missing. A leading cause of death in children with autism is drowning. A lot of cases is a thing that even I, when I was younger, went through was wandering. Autistic children seem to like to wander off. I'd sneak out at night, to be honest, and I about got my parents in trouble. Um, they're fixing to take some action on that, just because of the fact that I was not. It wasn't like they weren't watching me. I mean, it's in the middle of the night, but they do tend to wander, and in these cases, with that, a lot of autistic children can't swim. So that's what happens. I was lucky; I was taught from early age to swim, and that's kind of where the on the spectrum where I went down. I did have some difficulties with other things. Swimming was not one of those things. By the time I was 4, I still have floaties, but my parents were pretty sure I could handle myself. By the time I was 6, I was swimming without them. I to this day I could swim like a fish. Um, Crocodile. I mean, I literally do the whole thing underwater. I mean, it's just very natural to me. I don't have to plug my nose or anything. Having an intellectual disability, over 30% of people with ASD also have co-occurring intellectual disabilities. I mean, that's just go without saying. There's a number of things that can happen with us. Being diagnosed with ADHD, approximately 30 to 60% of children with ASD are also diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. A lot of times and that's the other thing where I was talking about misdiagnosis, sometimes it's not. They might have both, but they only see the one and don't test for the other. And vice versa. I mean, they might just not, they think it might just be autism and not ADHD accompanied with it. I think if one is tested, they need to keep an eye out for the other. I think that's a policy that needs to be done with doctors nowadays. Experiencing sleep issues. Oh God. Yeah. Yeah. I don't sleep very well, and that's because I could think about 10 different things all at once, and that is very aggravating to try to sleep to. Over 50% of children with ASD experience a chronic sleep disorder. I have insomnia. I'm lucky, without my pills, to get 4 or 5 hours of sleep a night. Um, Experiencing sleep or having depression. Sorry, I misread the line. Roughly 7% of children and 26% of all adults with autism experience depression. Like I said, I deal with it, or I have it. Having epilepsy, I have it. Up to a third of people with ASD also have epilepsy or some type of form of seizure disorder. Um, Being diagnosed with schizophrenia, I was thought whenever I was younger, that I had paranoid schizophrenia, which turned out to be completely BS. But it was just a psychologist that didn't really spend enough time for me. It was state mandated, just through family situation. So there's that. And but between 4 and 35% of adults with autism are also diagnosed with schizophrenia, compared to just over 1% of the regular population. And then struggling with weight issues, among children 2 to 5 years old with autism, 32% are overweight and 16% are obese. I personally was skin and bones. I mean, not like I was, had an eating disorder type of thing. I just was very picky with my food, like most people on the spectrum. They prefer certain few foods, textures, things like that. Like I prefer smooth surface, even slime. But if it's like a really sandpapery, I start stimming, which is basically like this, or something like that, just to release some of that stimuli. Um, but it's just when I reached 8 years old, I had a migraine last for a year. They think it was an early growth spurt because of the fact that I gained several inches and I gained about 30 or 40 pounds just within 3 months alone. So, but I did get a little bit overweight, but and I got near obesity levels 2 years ago, but I honestly ended up becoming diabetic, and I changed up my diet. I went to remission last week. Yay on that. And I lost 120 pounds. So I mean, but apparently it is a big thing I didn't know about that with weight issues. Um, when did autism first become diagnosed? And I'll give you a little bit more information here that I've just read up than most people. The first diagnosis was by a doctor called Dr. Hans Asperger's. He was a doctor, which there is some controversy there. It was during World War II when he first came up with autism or Asperger's. That's where Asperger syndrome came from, was his last name. Because the fact before autism was officially considered a different thing, they just considered it like a psychosis, and you were put in mental institutions and you never got out of there, period. Um, 1943 to describe children who exhibited socially withdrawn and isolated behaviors. Children who receive a diagnosis of autism likely showed severe behaviors, and children with milder symptoms may have gone unnoticed, which still happens to this day. Since 1943, the definition of diagnostic criteria for autism has evolved greatly, which is where and why the number's growing. Autism prevalence was believed to be roughly 1 in 2,500. This is 1966. 1980, autism spectrum disorder was first included in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. That's basically the catalog of different mental disorders. Kind of says in the name, but it's huge. It's a huge tool to use. 1987, a new edition of the DSM expanded the diagnosis criteria so that 8 of 16 criteria had to be met in order to receive a diagnosis rather than 6. So before then, you had to meet all 6 to be diagnosed. Which I think if I would have tried been diagnosed earlier, I wouldn't have been. Um, 1994, the DSM-4 added Asperger syndrome under the definition of ASD, broadening diagnostic criteria again. So that was ultimate one. I thought it was the fact that I'm fixing to say right now. I thought it was introduced then, but not in 1994. 2013, the DSM-5 combined autism, Asperger syndrome, and pervasive developmental disorder all under the label of autism. I mean, ultimately it was, but it started in 1994. The broadening definition of diagnosis criteria of autism has contributed to the steady increase of ASD diagnosis over the past decades. Combined with more awareness of the disorder, more people are receiving a autism diagnosis early in life, and not only a earlier, but a more positive affirmation. Um, Changes in autism statistics over time. Now, this is going to gauge how many were what besides the 19, which it brings up again. So in 2000, about 1 in 150 children was diagnosed with ASD. Okay, now remember, uh, statistically right now, worldwide, it's 1 in 160. So in 2000, it thought the U.S. alone was 1 in 150, and around the world was higher. Um, Compared to 1 in 54 children as of 2016. That's a huge jump. Huge, huge jump. Additional studies on developmental disabilities in children in the U.S. have recognized a similar trend. From 2009 to 2017, the percentage of children with autism increased from 1.1 to 2.5%, which I know that seems small, but even on a country scale, that's a huge jump. According to the Autism Society, the prevalence of ASD has increased between 6% and 15% each year from 2002 to 2010. Okay, so let's take in the least number of the least percentage, which is 6%. That is 8 years, 8 times 6. That is at least a 36% increase. If not, 36 to, I think, it's over, half will be 62. We'll say maybe 80% with the six and it's between 6 to 15%. That's huge. Like I said, huge jump. Um, Currently, over 3.5 million people in the U.S. have an autism diagnosis. Roughly 1% of the global population has ASD. Granted, like, that is a small percentage worldwide technically. But once you think of the numbers, and with the numbers that are rising more and more, um, it is beyond crazy. How just worldwide, that's how many people have it. And that is probably going to keep on increasing if this trend does occur. And who knows, maybe it's always been a part of it. It just wasn't widely, sought out until 1943. Who knows? Who really knows? Um, the cost of autism. Um, I'm not really going to cover that because it's just all about research. And we already saw earlier is 2%. Um, I'm going to go over the outlook for autism. While autistic individuals face difficulties that make various aspects of life more challenging, greater knowledge about the disorder has paved the way to better therapies. Autism research has allowed for more effective diagnostic processes as well as enhanced treatments and a better understanding of necessary accommodations for those with the disorder. Effective interventions, therapies, and healthcare services greatly improve quality of life for those with autism. Got with. They did, not me. I promise, not me. Thanks to these advancements in our approach to autism treatment, there are more opportunities for autistic individuals than ever before, which that is very, very, very true. Um, it, I cannot say enough that the more outreach, the more research, the more willingness to learn that there is, the greater it is going to be for people not only on the spectrum, but the outside spectrum to help those that they care about. Very, very, very important. Number one fact there. And I drive that home with anybody that I talk to. Learning about it and being able to help people with it. And not only that, but for those who have it like me, and, to feel okay in their own skin, in their own heart and own soul. That is the most important thing about this. That's why I'm doing this whole video here, is so that it is known. And if y'all want to outreach to me, or I'll give you this link if you want to read more about it, and it has several references in there. And I'll also include, probably in the near future, more links to help you with that, which I'll bring up later. I will. That's just all I want to do, is help. Now that I got done reading this, I'm going to go ahead and talk about my own experiences with ASD. Basically, like I said before, I was diagnosed at 3, and I seemed normal-ish at first, which on most cases we do, because we're still learning and developing as a, infant. Once kind of like settling into toddlerhood happens, that's when the notices start occurring. I know with me, I wasn't speaking, I didn't like being held, I cried a lot more than a normal child did. In fact, it got to where, with my mom and dad, at night I wouldn't sleep. I'd scream and cry all night. They found out that, when they tried to hold me to get me to sleep, it got worse. But if they stayed in the room with me, I was fine. I didn't scream and cry, I'd sleep. So they would take turns sleeping with me in the room. They literally just set up something to sleep with me. Now, and then I got that's what drove them to get me diagnosed. I got driven to the Texas Tech Medical Center here in Amarillo, Texas, to get diagnosed, and I think it was. I don't think there was much to it. I think pretty much I had all the statistics back then, which back then it was a very rare, like I kind of read earlier, rare thing to get diagnosed back then, that early. So they started putting me in different programs. Mom started a early childhood development class in the town I grew up in, which was Dumas, Texas. And I'll always forever hold my teachers to my heart, that from three to six when I went to that class, because besides my parents, they're the ones that got me to where I'm at today. I remember keeping up with a couple of them for a while, um, and it was just so awesome and amazing, you know. But I was still having problems talking. I didn't fully learn to talk till I was 6, and at that point they're starting to teach me sign language. Not only me, but my family, because they didn't know if I was ever going to be able to physically be able to talk, and they didn't know if I was going to make it past first grade because of that fact. If I had to be in special developmental classes my whole life. But my mom was not going to give up on me. Neither was my dad. Um, my mom started bribing me with vegetables, and I don't know how true the story is. I'll let my videos, my sister, not my videos. I'll let my sisters watch this and tell me if it's true or not. But from what my mom told me, she'd bribe me with vegetables, get me to say a word, and after a while, she would bribe me with sentences. And then, besides the therapy I was getting, that's what got me to it. I still didn't know how to tie my shoe. I didn't learn how to ride my bike till I was 13. No, 12. 12. Um, 11, 12. Somewhere around there. I can't exactly remember. Too many seizures and too much time passed. Um, but with that, anyways, after that, I attended kindergarten and early childhood development still at certain points in the day. And once I got to first grade, I attended those less. And the only other thing additionally was speech therapy because my S and T's. And you might catch it every now and again throughout my videos. I still have problems with S and T's when I'm not thinking as thoroughly. Um, but after that, I just kind of blossomed. I mean, I was still behind emotionally, and that's going to happen, But when I became 15, my ex stepmom, she noticed that I was different, and she'd always, not meanfully, but grab me by my chin, lift me up. She's like, "Honey, my eyes are right here." No, no, and she wasn't meaning anything bad by that, but she just knew that I looked down a lot, and she was like, "I understand you're different, but I want to work with you on that because people are going to think it's very disrespectful. You don't look them in the eyes." And it wasn't forced. She just wanted me to be able to hold myself in a social um, aspect. And so I got to where I can. I mean, I do it every now and again, even on this video. I'm looking down, but with all these different changes, that's part of the reason why people are like shocked when I tell them I have it, because the fact that I can carry a conversation, I can look people in the eye 95% of the time, and they don't know. So, and I am shy and timid, but that's um, that's just it. And and it wasn't until I knew I always had autism, but I didn't quite fully understood what that meant until I got into high school. And I remember the first time I was open about it. Everybody just thought I was this oversensitive kid, which technically I was, but there's a lot more to it. I was in a history class, and our teacher was talking about the differences in cultures and everything, and the people in it, and she did bring up certain things, including autism. And at that point, I was just raising my hand, and she was like, "Yes, Justin, do you have anything to input?" I was like, "Well, I do. I personally have autism. I'm mildly autistic." That's what my mom and dad would call it, was mild autism. So, I mean, I guess that's how it was put to them. I don't know, but that's how I used to infer it as well. And everybody just kind of looked at me like, "What?" And she was like, "Really?" And then she asked a question that opened my field of view about this whole topic so much. She had asked me what it was like living in between the autistic world, and my being my normal self. And I kind of sat there for a second, honestly thought about hard about it, And I just kind of looked up. I was like, well, ma'am, there is no two worlds. She's like, what do you mean? I was like, it's not like I'm living in one or the other. It's who I am. This is my world. And she got a smile on her face and started clapping because the fact I never have thought about that before, but that is very true. To you, that's your world. And I think more people need to have that outlook. Just in anything, period. Just because it's different for us doesn't mean it's different for you. And that is the very definition of autism. You know, to me, anyways. And ever since then, with at least that classroom of people that knew, they treat me a lot different. They understood who I was a lot more. And some, like I said about bullying earlier, some of them were bullied me on earlier in age. And that's when some of them apologized. They didn't realize the struggles I had. And then most of the time, the bullies don't understand the struggles. Or is that, or they do, and they're, like I said, they're going through their own issues, and they're just having it, they just let it out on other people. And then I didn't fully start doing outreach and talking about it more openly till I was 21. And then I just kind of fully opened my world to people about it. And within the last 5 years, I've really grown into my own and everything else. I'm learned, like I said, I've had therapy. I'm learning to deal with things a lot better. I am, taking it a lot more head on than letting it fester. And and that's just the thing here. And one thing I really want to drive home that's important is that, even, if you're, to this day, if you're struggling with it and you're not as okay with it, that's fine too. I'm not saying, everybody's going to be comfortable with their diagnosis. Some people absolutely hate it. But that's just very, very much one thing I kind of said it earlier, but I want to say it again. My comment box is open for anybody. If you want to direct message me about this and talk about it, I don't mind. If you're a parent that doesn't know if their child has it or not, if you want to message me, please. If you feel like you need to outreach to somebody else, please Google it. There are plenty of resources to help. With a friend of mine, her daughter, after getting to know me, she thought her daughter might have had it, and she had her take a self-evaluation test online, and they suspected that she might have been autistic, and she went and got tested officially, and she got diagnosed with it. So that's just one of the things there, and that is one thing that I do want to touch as well, and that's a huge difficulty in my life, and that's the last thing I'll kind of bring up: dating and autism. And I might do a more thorough video because this is a whole other subject. But I know with me, with telling physical cues or tone of voice or anything, please be patient with us. We don't mean anything malicious or ill-intended or mean. We just might not get it. Guys or girls, they say guys don't understand girls and girls don't understand guys. Us on the spectrum, it's a whole different other being. I mean, I've gotten to where I understand voice cues really good. That's why I do very well on my phone calls. But facial expressions, sometimes, even though I see the move, it looks blank to me. And I can't tell if someone's mad at me or not. Or, sometimes I think they're a little bit too mad. So just have the patience with us. And then the last thing I am also going to say is, you know, um, just be open, just as a general thing, be open to us. Like I said, with some people, they're struggling with it more than others, and sometimes we just need that extra shoulder to cry on. Sometimes we need that input, and I have plenty of friends that let me do that, but some of us, it's not as easy. So if you see someone, just even period in life, you see someone that's struggling, reach out to them. Even if they're not on the spectrum, we're all humans one way or the other, and we all deserve to be treated fairly and right. You know, even if they've had a checkered past, if they're trying to improve themselves, don't judge. Just help them out, until they prove you otherwise. Especially with us on the spectrum, because, like I said, sometimes we don't realize what we're doing. Sometimes we don't know how an action affects us. Oh, and that's the other thing. This is one of the biggest misconceptions ever with autism. With most of us, we don't actually lack empathy. We actually have a overload of empathy. We get so much that we don't quite know how to appropriate a response. Like people that are, let's just the classic example. Let's say someone has gone through a really hard time, and we do something that's random or anything. It's not random to us. It's our way of reaching out. So just understand that if you know we're autistic and we're doing something, we care, and with the full intention of doing that. Anyways, like I said, I if you feel like you need a comment, please. If you like this video, like, and if you like this, if you like me, period, subscribe. I mean, this is going to be a general of what my videos are. It's just me being real, whether it's playing video games or this or anything I do. It's just to entertain y'all and because I love humanity. I love everybody. And I want to give something back that's been given to me. So, and like I also said, I'll be posting this website as well as other stuff to help you with this. And I just appreciate your time that you're giving me watching this right now, even even if it's not very many people at first. You know, um, the biggest drive I have for this is just to have fun and to be able to interact in a new way with people. And you're giving me a shot and a chance, so I appreciate that. With much love, YouTube fam, this is Aspinus, and you have a great day.